So looking forward to next season and sort of wanted to discuss with you the current squad and in the transfer window, as we've had so much sort of speculation to begin with, buying and selling in the first team squad. Of course, we're biased towards getting players in and the excitement and the dopamine hit of a new transfer. But I think selling is as important this summer as well for Chelsea in terms of getting investment, in terms of being able to reinvest in the first team squad, but as well the amount of players we've got, not only the current first team squad that Tuchel has been using pretty well, that probably need to be moved on this summer. The loan army, young players who probably need loans as well. I guess it's a tough question to sort of ask because I've struggled with it myself. If you were to sort of be in charge of just your sort of perfect summer window, if you were to look instead, rather than talking about players who we know don't have a future at Chelsea, because I think that'd just be a waste of time, looking at the current first team squad that ended against Porto, buying and selling in terms of, firstly, who are you letting go?
Letting go. I mean, we know some of the names rumoured already. Whether it's Marcos Alonso, for example, and Emerson, possibly a central defender, no idea who, maybe a Zuma. It's difficult. Personally, I think it depends on who we are actually trying to target, which again is something that we don't actually really know. Yes, we know we're going for a striker, absolutely, and maybe that means that we end up letting one go because of it. And the way that Chelsea function, it's an in and out policy, so there's always one in, one out. Unless if the squad, just needs players to go to make funds and whatnot, including the loan army. So if you talk in that instance, okay, we get a striker in, who are we going to let go? Most likely Olivier Giroud.
Yeah.
Or possibly Tammy Abraham. But if we actually don't get anyone in, God forbid, because I think we do need someone in, but if we don't get anyone in, we might not let go of them. So it's on that basis. Personally, I think Giroud will end up going. I'd love Tammy to stay. But again, it's up to him. Although I think if Giroud does go, he might see a bit of scope for himself to develop and hopefully get into the team. We'll see, but we'll definitely need a striker. Apart from that, though, I honestly think there's a lot in the loan army that we can make money from. You're looking at Bakayoko, for example, Zappacosta, Barkley, maybe Loftus-Cheek as well if he doesn't impress. I know a lot of these players are going to be getting a chance in pre-season under Tuchel, but I don't have high hopes for any of them, if I'm honest, especially with the squad that we have, especially in midfield. So I'd say money to be made from the loan army. And in terms of the first team, in terms of your Marcos Alonso's, your Emerson's, your possibly like a Zuma or your Tammy Abraham, your Giroud, it's going to be dependent on who actually comes in. If not, we might just keep them.
So in terms of like Chelsea with Ziyech and the future of a potential surprise departure this summer, is the insistence on maybe getting a right-sided player like Adama Traore or the kind of pursuit of Hakimi. If we were to go in for a Traore, the numbers for me just don't add up in the current first team squad. Someone has to, especially because we know Traore has actually predominantly been playing as a winger rather than as a wing back. He's played more as a winger. I at times, of course, he can play as a wing back, but I look at Ziyech, I look at Hudson-Odoi, I look at Pulisic, I look at Havertz, Werner, Mount, so many players. It just, where is the opportunity going to come from? And I look at Ziyech as a player that we bought for a good price. It was kind of, his transfer fee reminded me of like 2014 business given the fee. It was like 34 million, right, for a player of that quality. And I just wonder, maybe the club could see that could be a player we could let go this summer.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ziyech was probably brought in with the vision in mind of having, especially a back four system, one right winger, one right-sided offensive winger, and he was going to be the one that was going to use that left foot and cut in. We had the idea when all these players were brought. Werner up top, Havertz behind, Pulisic on the left, Ziyech on the right. We all had it in our heads, and I think Lampard probably had the same sort of vision. But now, with the way that it's gone and the way that we have a lot of options, especially playing a back three, and you look at the midfield and the wingers and who's up top, they're not all going to play at the same time. So you're going to get players that miss out. And everyone else has fit into the system, except Ziyech. And it's crazy to think that, but it's obviously he's had his role. He's come on at times and he's done well and he's got himself a couple of goals and whatnot, and it's nice. But the one that's looking least like he fits in is Ziyech, and it's unfortunate. But when you're trying to accommodate, Havertz, Mount, Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, Werner, have I missed anyone out because there's so many names? It's hard to fit them in, and especially with the wingers in terms of Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, and Ziyech. It's going to be difficult. So if there is one name, it's going to be Ziyech, I reckon. Although I'm not entirely, dead cert that he's going to be leaving. He might not. I thought, to be honest, if we were to get Hakimi, that might convince him to stay. But Hakimi's not happening now, so I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens. But yeah, Ziyech could end up being the one sold.
I guess the more general point about selling players, and Chelsea have this issue, is like in the current pandemic market, still pandemic hit market, is who's going to be able to pay for these players. That's when we're talking about a potential exit, with the money that Chelsea give to players just on wages, who's going to be able to pay? It's like the struggle we're having loaning Kepa. This is the issue Chelsea currently have. So even someone like Ziyech, who the fee may be 30-something million, but I'm sure the wages are going to still be a problem for a lot of clubs to cover. And I agree with you. If Tuchel sticks with the back three, and I think that the right-sided player kind of leans into an idea that he would maybe want to stick with it a lot more than maybe we'd think, then for me, in the current first team, really in the front three, which is where Ziyech should be competing for in terms of actually realistically getting into the team. I mean, he's not getting in front of Mount because no one's getting in front of Mount. After Havertz's form at the back end of last season, he's going to be a cert. And we know that Timo gets so much, time on the pitch for Tuchel as well. So where's he going to, this is the issue. I think even if Ziyech stays, I think he may have a problem getting into the team unless Tuchel switches system again.
That's the thing. It's going to require a completely different formation and a completely different setup, because you can't play a back three, have wing backs, have a double pivot, and then have 3 or 4 options in midfield or up front. You can't. You can only fit 11 men on the pitch. So this is where I think Ziyech is missing out, because as you've said, Mount is a starter. Right now, Havertz is looking like he's going to become a starter. Werner, despite his misses, needs to be in that forward line in terms of what he brings. And if he's not necessarily a winger, so you can't really compare the two. But then you look at a Pulisic or a Hudson-Odoi, are they going to be playing? But we got wing backs to think about: Chilwell, Reece James. Like, you can't fit all of these players in the same team, unless you switch it up. And that does give the option of going to a back four and having fullbacks and then having wingers and then possibly having other men alongside your forward man. So that would accommodate Ziyech a lot more. But right now, it does make you think, do you try and fix something that's not broken? That's where I am, because I'd love to see a back four, and I think at times in the season we're probably going to need to go to it. But the back three is working, so why stop it? Might as well develop on it, unless if we get found out or other teams begin to find a blueprint on how to play against us in that way. One good thing is that we know Tuchel's very flexible, and I think he has the mindset and the knowledge in order to get players to play a different way as well. So it depends on what's in his head. It depends on Tuchel's plan.
It's against sort of the low block teams that we've struggled against. A week before the Champions League final, we got beat by Aston Villa, and the type of result we've seen consistently for Chelsea. And I do wonder if that's where maybe a tactical alteration is needed, in games that Chelsea, because I think for a Premier League title challenge is that against the top teams, I don't think that's where it's going to be decided. And I think that Tuchel has proven that he can win those games and get results. I think it's against the likes of Brighton, it's against the likes of, they got relegated, but West Brom last season, or teams that are just going to sit deep. And Chelsea have to find ways to break them down. And I do wonder at times, do we need a back three in those games? That's the big question I'd be asking. You did talk about, at the start of your answer, in terms of buying players, and you said, to obviously striker. I mean, I just wonder if Haaland's going to be the big target. Are we going to have any money left to buy anyone else if we, because to buy him is going to break our transfer record. It's probably on top of that going to break our wage structure as well. So is that really the only area that's top priority for you?
For me, in terms of what we actually need, yeah, because we need a goal scorer. We need someone who's going to put the ball in the net. It's as simple as that. It tells you everything you need to know. When our top goal scorer in the Premier League season was Jorginho because of the amount of penalties he scored. Like, that's how deep it is. So, and somehow we got top four. It makes you wonder. Um, and we won the Champions League. So can you imagine if we had an in and out goal scorer? Especially with the chances we've missed, it would be good to have someone up top that's just going to be clinical and have the confidence to put the ball in there, or to take a risk when it's needed, or to pick out a spot when people least expect it and to stick it there. So yeah, I'd reckon that would be number one priority. In defense, we're super solid. I wouldn't be gutted if we don't sign a central defender, for example, or if we don't get someone at the back. There was a whole Hakimi thing, and we know how that's ending now. But that was never a necessity. That was never a priority. It was just, oh yeah, nice to have if it happens. But we're good in that department. We're okay. We can manage. In midfield is another priority, you'd say, with the possibilities of injuries to Kante or Jorginho or Kovacic, Billy Gilmore going on loan, as we discussed last week. We need someone just in case, because we saw what happened to the latter stages of the season with Kante and with Kovacic. Your options are really restricted. So it'd be nice to have another option there. But for me, yeah, priority is just getting someone that's a goal scorer, someone up front, and probably a defensive midfielder. And I think if we do that, great transfer window.
I think that's the general consensus in terms of maybe in midfield. I know that's sort of a touchy subject for some people in terms of, because I think my whole thing has been sort of the profile of midfielder we don't have in that area that's been more of a problem. I think we've lacked a Matic in that area. And I think that one of the things Joe Tweedy, a great guy, brought up on the latest Alex Goldberg podcast was that, bringing in I'm going to say his name even though it annoy people, bringing in a Rice or a Tchouaméni, I think will help Jorginho and Kovacic. I think, and Kante obviously, I think it will assist those players, rather than taking them down. I think it would help free them up a bit more. And I think it would help Tuchel have more options to go to a 4-3-3 if he wanted to in games where Chelsea need to be a lot more daring. Unfortunately at the moment, as well as they've done, it does feel like at times he's done so well with that midfield in terms of limiting the issues that we had previously with it. But with the attacking talent we were just speaking about with Ziyech, to allow those attackers, I think, a lot more freedom and to get maybe more of them on the pitch. I wonder if, do you always need a back three? If you added a profile of a Tchouaméni, for instance, to that area, it would allow Tuchel that option at times to go to a 4-2-3-1 potentially, or a 4-3-3. Because I just can't see us signing both Rice and Haaland in the same summer. Like, it's just the amount of money for both of those players. It's just not going to happen. So I think Tchouaméni's a lot more realistic. Any other players that you think, as let's say, sort of shock letting go players that we don't expect? Is there any you're concerned about in the first team? Maybe not this summer, but you think this next season is massive for them, like for the future of their Chelsea career?
Not necessarily in terms of any worry, because I feel like everyone's got their spot nailed on. The one that I would say maybe comes to mind is possibly Christian Pulisic. That's the only one, because can he be consistent throughout the season as a starter? We know how impactful he is coming off the bench. He's one of the best, as far as I'm concerned, coming off the bench. Is that his game? Is that his profile? Or is there more to it? Can we rely on a Pulisic starting, consistently and performing at the highest level? And I think there is a player in there that can do it. And he's been unlucky with injuries and he's been unlucky with time off. So we have to give that opportunity. But it's at the back of your head and it makes you wonder. Apart from that, though, everyone else, there's obviously the skepticism on Timo Werner. And, but I think he's kind of silenced a few in terms of what he actually does on the pitch and what he brings to the team. Unlike other forwards that we've had previously that just don't really do much and they don't score. Werner somehow, yes, doesn't score much, but ends up becoming man of the match. It's baffling. But I think that's helped him a lot. And hopefully going into next season, he will start banging in goals. And if we do bring someone in, then, there's someone that he can link up with and provide that support system for. But apart from that, Havertz, Mason Mount. Havertz has come out his shell now. He's looking fantastic, even at the Euros. Mason Mount, we know what Mason Mount's going to do. I think he's going to become a Chelsea legend, if I'm honest. Same goes for our wing-backs. You look at Chilwell and Reece James. All of our centre-backs have been just super class. Rudiger's been through the roof. One of the best centre backs in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Thiago Silva, Christensen, Danish Maldini, Aspie. Everyone's done brilliant. So I'm not necessarily worried about anyone, really.